You're listening to Synergy to Synastry, the podcast where two corporate girlies called to follow their intuition take you on a journey of self-exploration through metaphysical modalities.
I'm Christine, intuitive coach and clairvoyant.
And I'm Renee, psychic intuitive and astrologer.
We're excited that you're here and honored to be your spiritual guides. If you enjoy this podcast, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen. It helps listeners find our show, plus it automatically enters you into our raffles to win a free psychic reading.
Now, let's get into the episode.
Welcome to part 2 of our Divination Tools episode.
If you missed part 1, head back into your feed and listen to that one first, because we covered water divination, tea leaf readings, and palmistry.
And don't forget that while we were recording, we had messages from Spirit come through that completely blew our minds.
I still can't get over how fascinating that experience was. All this to say, if you haven't heard part 1, we recommend you circling back. But if you're all caught up on the conversation, Christine, why don't you tell us about our last divination tool?
Oh yes, I'm so excited. Bibliomancy. Biblio means book. It's the practice of using literature or books to intuit guidance. Some people who do this use sacred texts like the I Ching, the Torah, the Quran, or the Bible as a religious practice. If you're using a religious text for spiritual guidance, it's permitted in religions such as Christianity because the book represents the holy word of God, unlike tarot cards. This practice originates as far back as the Greek and Romans. The Romans used to use sorts, or sortes, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but it's spelled S-O-R-T-E-S, and they were small tablets of wood with lines from respected poets on them. They would throw those tablets or drop them into water, and whichever tablets, floated to the top or popped up first were the ones providing guidance. There's a great article from Enchanted Living magazine that goes into more detail about the history of this, so I'll link that in the show notes. Today, this is still practiced either by those who use religious texts or simply using a book that calls to you. We, Renee and I, started looking into this because we noticed there was a trend on social media of people turning to a specific page of any book and reading the first line. And like any of these practices, it's another way to tap into your intuition and have fun with it.
Taking us back in time, there was an episode in season 1. And in the What I Learned This Week, I was talking about a specific recipe that I made.
Yes, I remember this now.
Yes. And what I had done was, I don't even remember what I was doing. I think I must have been doing like an automatic pen writing, like guided journaling with my guides. And something came up about grabbing a book off of my shelf. And I was guided to open the book to a certain page. And when I did, it ended up being a recipe in this book, which was not a cookbook. It just happened to have a couple recipes tucked in it. Not long later, my sister walked in the room and said, I feel like we should have something different for dinner, and we have to go food shopping. Do you have any ideas? I'm like, I literally have a book sitting right next to me that has a recipe that neither of us have ever eaten it before. So we ended up going to the store and buying the ingredients to make that recipe. For those of you who use oracle cards or tarot cards, they come with a guidebook. And there is a practice for some people that what they do, especially when they haven't developed their intuition, they just shuffle the cards, draw the one on top, and then they go right to the guidebook and they read what the book says. I've never really done that because when I first got them, I was already working on my intuition. But one thing that when I do use the guidebook, which is now pretty few and far between, I hardly ever use them. But when I did, I would also use my intuition to guide me. Look at the last sentence on the right page. I would get that information and then just read that and make sure I didn't read anything else. I've done kind of tangential versions of that, but they were very guided by my spirit team. Do you think it counts?
Even if you're going to a book for guidance and you flip to a random page, who was that guided by?
Those little fortune teller things that, we used to make growing up, you open and close in, the different directions, then you flip up and you can read what your answer is. Somebody who's not going at the bibliomancy piece intuitively, it feels like that to me. I have a question and I'm just going to flip and stop on a certain page. You're feeling that intuitive hit, some sort of a sensation or knowing where on the page you should stop. It's like a step farther from just the little fortune teller thing, but there's got to be layers and levels to take it much deeper so that it's closer to what we've been talking about with all these other divination tools where like you can really either get very analytical or drop in to like other states of mind while doing them.
If there's anybody listening who uses Bibliomancy regularly and wants to tell us about their experience, please send us an email because, what's that phrase? Listening ears are dying to know. We really want to know. Let's move on to our dream segment.
I have been waiting weeks to share this dream. This is the first time, aside from the barrel dream that you had, that was our first real visitation dream. But he wasn't in it. It was like essence of him. This is the first time on this podcast that while we were recording, I had a very vivid, multifaceted visitation dream. Second it happened, I knew I had to share it on the pod. And part of why this is so perfect for this episode is because dreams are also a divination tool, which we love. So to recap my dream, I was in an old house in front of a fireplace that was undergoing renovation. I was complimenting the wood stain color that my mom chose for it. My dad was there and he was wiping something at the bottom and I was like, oh no, like it's going to ruin it. And my mom said, oh, it's fine. Like I'm going to get to that part later. Not a big deal. I'm missing a little bit of connective tissue, but then suddenly I'm in a different room, still talking with my mom. I was telling her about my grandmother who died a year before I was born. I was just casually explaining, oh, it wasn't just the heart condition that she had when she passed. I don't remember what the name is, but there was something else going on with her. Now I'm in another vignette and I'm walking around a bedroom by myself. I was on mute listening to a conference call between my mom, sister, and my dad. So I'm having all of these characters that keep repeating that are in my family. And for context here, the grandmother I'm talking about is my dad's mother. I'm listening to this conversation, looking at different items and trinkets that are on the shelf as I'm listening. And ultimately, the conversation was that my sister had come into possession of something that my grandmother had owned. It wasn't a really significant object, but as they were talking, I saw this tube of ointment. I felt like, oh, that was the object. So again, it's something like so minor, but it was like a medication. And in the last vignette, we were talking about health stuff. My sister had come into possession of it. And essentially my dad was saying, oh, well, it was my mom. So like, I want it. And then my mom jumps in and said, well, Leanne worked really hard to get this. And she had some connections at work. She deserves to have it because she put in all of that legwork to get it. Suddenly, I hear a noise behind me. Pretty much this phone call just is irrelevant. I turn around and across the room, I'm seeing the doorway perpendicular to me. If somebody entered, they would be coming in from that left-hand side. And I was seeing like the top of a head, somebody coming in and out, trying to get in through the passageway. In my dream, I was thinking, oh my gosh, I'm seeing a ghost right now. And it was my grandmother. I was thinking she was visiting me. I couldn't really remember everything that we were talking about, which can happen with visitations. And I've never had a visitation dream with her before. So it also makes sense that I wouldn't really retain as much because it's our first time connecting in the astral plane in this way. Then I jump into another vignette and it's me telling my family that I had this dream. I'm sitting in a living room and I'm telling my mom, brother, sister, and my brother's fiance about this dream. And in particular, my mom and Rachel were chiming in and they were asking me questions and commenting. Again, I lost some of this. I started waking up as in real life. I was waking up. I have never had this sensation before. So in the morning, after I wrote all this stuff down, I texted Christine and I told my sister about it. I called my mom later and recapped the whole thing. I've never had this experience before. It was so fascinating. You know, when you have that feeling where you're kind of getting pulled out of a dream, so you feel like you're getting sucked out of something and you're moving through some sort of a space. So my eyes were closed and I was aware of the fact that I was waking up. And I heard a woman talking to me. She was responding to something that I said, but I didn't know what I said. Clearly, some of my consciousness was somewhere else and I was in conversation. And then I was waking up and going, who's this lady talking to me? Part of my brain was splitting off. When you have a visitation dream, there's a certain quality to it. My mom, who has visitation dreams before, like we were talking about it on the phone, and she's felt it. You know, that's what that is. And usually I'm overcome with emotion, so I start crying. I have to remember what she said. So I'm writing the dream down. I know that it was my grandmother. I could only remember like one sentence from what she was saying as I was waking up. And it was. And I'm glad it felt real because in every way it was.
I want to cry. That reminds me of, obviously, Harry Potter, but when Dumbledore says to Harry, of course this is happening in your head, Harry, but just because it's happening in your head doesn't mean it's not real. Like,
I know. That was the only sentence I was able to grab onto, but I know that she had been talking and she said something else, but I kind of forgot it because it's like you can't hold on to that energy, and I was waking up. The last thing I remember about the dream is Rachel was saying something to me and talking about the dream I had, the dream and the dream that I had. Does that mean none of that was real because I was just talking to my grandma the whole time? Or is it that I started dipping out and I was talking to her and then I wasn't able to hold the energy and that's why I started to wake up from it? And I'm not really sure. Normally what happens for me is I have a plot line, somebody comes in and they interrupt. I had just that. I had someone coming in the dream and making noise behind me. But what was interesting is that it was broken up into these vignettes and I was talking about her before. And then I had another dream that was talking about that dream. It was like so many layers of things going on. My sister has had some other kind of mysterious condition thing we're not even sure of. This thing that my sister found, which was apparently an ointment connecting her to my grandmother. Is it some information about that? Why would this come through that I had all these vignettes and it was talking about my grandmother's health? When I called my mom up, I asked her, are you aware of her like having any other conditions or needing an ointment or something? And she didn't really have information on it. So I don't know. She came up in a mediumship reading that I did with Hallie this past year. So she's clearly been trying to connect with me.
yeah, that's so interesting.
As far as our dream analysis goes, I was only really able to identify a couple symbols. Renovations can be a symbol of personal growth and self-improvement. The ointment and the medication, that was also hard to find because nobody was using it. And normally when you look this stuff up, it comes up like it's drugs of some kind. So the only other one that I was able to find was listening to a conversation, because in that third act, I was hearing a phone conversation. As I was researching this, just as a tidbit, apparently a very common way for people to experience visitation dreams is to have a phone in the dream. The loved one is contacting you via phone.
I think the first visitation dream I ever had, I had to be maybe 11 or 12. My grandmother had passed away, my mom's mother, and a few days after she died, I dreamt that I was in my family's basement. My dad was like, Chrissy, somebody's on the phone for you. It was my grandma, and it was kind of like what you're describing. Like, it was like our first connection ever. So it was almost like there was a holograph of her standing on the stairs trying to get into contact with me. And then, of course, now, like, her and I have full-blown conversations. I feel like that's the gateway drug into more intense or more easily recognizable visitation dreams.
Listening to a conversation is encouragement to pay attention and to be open to new information. And isn't that perfect? Because that's really how this dream felt. I woke up thinking, did I just get new information about my grandmother? Information for whatever is going on health-wise for my sister? Information about opening this channel of communication? What else do I need to pay attention to? Has she been trying to send me signs? Because I don't really know her and we never met. maybe I've just been missing them. Quick note that just popped into my head as I was saying I don't really know her. The Meet the Parents episode in season 1, my mom told the story about how I was, as like a newborn, laughing in my high chair for the first couple years of my life, lived in the same house that this grandmother had lived in. And my mom had said she always thought that the reason I was laughing is because I was talking to her.
I thought the same thing. Very, very cool, Renee. I'm so happy you had this dream. So I initially put this dream down and I analyzed it in the way we typically would. I looked at symbols and stuff. And then about a week later, I had a call with a family member. And I think this was a combination dream of a premonition and symbols that we should look into. So I'm going to dive into both of it. But I think it was episode 6. We answered a listener question. How do you know a dream is a premonition? And we were like, you don't know until afterwards. And I conveniently had this conversation, so we'll tie it all up in a bow. I found a third cat, a female cat. I think she was a kitten. Oh my God, I can't adopt another cat. I already have 2. She was standing next to a blanket, and I flipped the blanket over, and there's 3 more kittens in there. Oh my God, like what am I going to do with 7 cats? My neighbor was helping me out with her. She was wearing a collar with 3 bells on it, so we could like figure out where she was. But what I thought was interesting is that the number 3 repeated itself so many times in this dream. And in waking life, I've been seeing the 3s repeating constantly. I adopted a third cat. I found 3 kittens. The kitten that I had adopted wore a collar with 3 bells. Kitten symbolizes a transitional phase towards independence, meaning you're ready to explore new things life has to offer, which kind of like goes along with my teacup reading. The number 3 in dreams signifies life, vitality, inner strength, completion, imagination, creativity, energy, self-exploration, and experience. Dreams of the number 3 may be telling you that the third time's a charm. I don't know what the third time could be, so stay tuned for that. To hear a bell in your dream represents a warning or a call to order. The ringing of the bell signals the beginning of something new. It may also be a way for your subconscious to prepare you for whatever is happening next. And I thought about my teacup reading where once I leave the home, it's like this bird is flying and it seemed like there was some sort of prosperous journey. So I was telling my grandma, and this is the grandma who used to read tea leaves. I said, I had a dream about a cat and 3 kittens. And my uncle, who my entire life has always owned dogs, adopted a mama cat and 3 kittens. Are you kidding me? So, curious what you think, Renee.
You were asking about in 3s. You were saying something about like, oh, third time's a charm. I had dropped in, it's a new relationship. Have you felt like you've had 2 really big, meaningful relationships?
It's so funny you say that because I wasn't going to say this, but of course you're psychic. But when I said that, I thought in my brain, oh, it's a relationship. But then I didn't want to say anything. And I've had more than 2 serious relationships, but of the relationships I had, there were 2 that I thought they were my person.
Well, there you go. I like
Yeah.
how I almost said today's class, in today's episode, I've had multiple times as we've been sitting here, the information about you and us has dropped in while we've been talking, which is so unusual because it doesn't usually happen.
Especially on divination episodes.
I
I was
know.
talking about this. I was in a coaching class. It was me, the coach, and another student. And the student asked a question, and I had a drop in, like you had. I heard it, but I'm like, this isn't my class. Like, I'm not going to share. The coach was like, Christine, I feel like you got something. Do you want to share? I'm like, if you're okay with me channeling, I'm going to open the floodgates. It's a really important thing to know that like this channel's always on and it's up to us whether we open it or not, right? And like let the message come through. Of course, today on an episode about divination, we were like, let the floodgates open.
I agree. I think the fact that we have done this divination episode and then also received a bunch of information about ourselves, it goes back to what you've said previously. It's going to be really interesting to track our dreams in our dream segment, looking at those over time as milestones and as flags planted in the ground what has been happening. It does seem like this is an especially important episode also for us because we've had some breakthroughs and some aha moments and some insights coming through for each other and for us as a pair, just as we've been trying to teach and explain our experiences with trying new divination tools. So I also view it as encouragement to keep doing this, to keep experimenting, because of course we did it for the podcast. We can do more of that and or come back to some of these and repeat them because there's more to uncover. That's how it feels for me.
Let's move on to our channeled messages. Another surprise. We're actually going to do our channeled messages via Bibliomancy today. Renee and I have each chosen some literature from which we're going to channel messages for you. I chose the book Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas because I'm reading it right now and I truly cannot put it down. Every second I have to spare, I try to read a sentence or a page because I'm so obsessed with it. So I feel like this is a good book to use right now because I'm really connected to it. I asked 2 questions because I was getting the message to turn to page 77. Renee said that she actually mentioned it earlier when we were recording. So that's either confirmation that we all need to know something on page 77. And if it's not, I'm going to pull from a second random page another question that came up. The first question that I heard was, what advice does the listener need to hear? And that's where we go to page 77. And I'm going to read the paragraph that jumps out at me. But he didn't want to have this conversation with Cale, and Cale sure as hell didn't want to have this conversation with him. So Dorian just shrugged. She'll be fine, and you'll laugh at yourself for worrying. Even if he's as well guarded as she claims, she's the champion for a reason, right? It sounds like if you're worrying about someone, you don't need to worry about them. But take what resonates from this reading. The second question, what is something the listener can do to spark inspiration? I'm just going to flip to a random page. It's page 194, but the sentence that stuck out was, why not learn a little history? If you're looking for inspiration, maybe try learning a little bit of history. And with that, we'll go over to Renee.
I used 2 different books. The first one is You Were Born for This by Channing Nicholas. I asked the question, as I normally do for these readings, what do the listeners need to know when this episode comes out? Before any words or images came in, I just got 68, as in page 68. I flipped right to it. I was kind of inquiring about that and like, oh, like, why didn't I receive anything? And what came through was, don't worry about all that because this is going to be more fun. Whoever is present today, it's clearly some different energies, but like, I got a chatty Cathy over here, like giving me details on what we're doing. I flipped to page 68. That whole page was talking about one thing, and it was sun in the first house. So in this book, it's discussing some different natal placements and really understanding your big 3. And I tuned in, looking away from the book. Okay, what am I supposed to read on this page? And I got line 18, so I counted down. Where my finger landed was, quote, the energy of our life force. And I thought, well, that's a great synopsis of this placement when you have sun in the first house, which is about your identity. It sounds to me like maybe what we're living in right now is a call for exploration, getting out of our shells. And then I was remembering that this episode is dropping right as summer starts, which is when the sun goes into Cancer, and Cancer is in my first house. And I said out loud, oh my goodness. That is perfect. Okay, well, this is supposed to be for the collective. It's not supposed to be for me, but like it totally related for me. I was drawn to this sentence toward the end of the page, and it reads, the sun is urging you to find all authentic ways to express your solar nature and discover how it can serve your life and its purpose. I was nudged to move over to my second book. So it's this feeling of a new era. So we're starting a new chapter. The second book that I used is Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay. I just flipped until I knew that I was on the right page. So I looked away, I was flipping, and I was like, okay, right around here, go a couple more pages. Okay, good. And then I knew I needed to look at the first line and then partway down the page. So I literally had one finger pointed at the top, one finger pointed partway down, and I looked at where my fingers were. The first finger was pointed at uneven acting. And what came through with that, the second I read it, was watching your footing, like being consistent with these practices and goals. So you're starting this new chapter, trying to lean into your authentic self, focusing on your purpose, this life force, harnessing this summer energy, making sure that you're being consistent with your goals and really following that pursuit. And the second finger was pointed at, quote, a handsome billionaire. And I was like, excuse me? Is this for me?
I mean, I hope it's for all of us. No.
No. So I then asked, I was like, okay, this is supposed to be a collective reading. What are you doing? Like, why am I getting handsome billionaire? It was feeling like potentially there being a figure emerging. I'm really curious to see if this pans out. A figure emerging that felt like a nice billionaire, not trying to take advantage of the collective, specifically getting things about hunger and major global issues and really harnessing the energy of the Cancer season, and someone who's actually has influence, has the money to back it up, but is trying to caretake a little bit more. But I felt like this is somebody helping the collective and not just like, oh, I'm going to run into a handsome billionaire.
I mean, we can hope for both, right?
We can hope for both. Maybe it's the same person.
Remember how I wanted us to date brothers? Like, this could be it.
Maybe the handsome billionaire has a brother.
Oh, my light just started flickering. Thanks, Spirit.
So for the mantra, I thought I was going to be done there. And I was like, oh, no, mantra. All right. I flipped to a different page. I just kind of pointed right at something. And of course, I have to laugh to myself. Of all of the pages in this book, which for anyone that's familiar with it, I mean, this is a research book. This is an essay book. It's talking about race and gender and society and culture. Of all of the pages that I flipped to and all the words that I'm pointing at, my finger lands on spiritual cleansing. Christine's jaw's on the floor. Crazy, right? And the mantra that came through from that is, my choices allow me to cleanse my spirit.
Very important if we're going to start a new chapter.
Even though I was using two different books and some different methodologies, somehow this actually made sense as a cohesive message by the end of all of that. So would you do that again?
Bibliomancy?
Yeah, for a reading. Or do you feel like you need more time to master it?
I think I would do it again. I don't know if I would do it for reading. Like, I might do it for fun.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, it didn't... Tea leaf reading, I was, like, in the zone. This did not feel in the zone. How do you feel?
Like I said, I kept laughing at the stuff that I flipped to and the things I was pointing at. Either it hit me right away, or I was like, wait, I don't know if I get that. And then 2 seconds later, something would click. But some of the things that came through felt very future focused. So I don't actually know what this means until we get there, especially because I had, a handsome billionaire. I'm like, well,
maybe that's why I'm like,
pretty concrete feeling,
Yeah. I don't know.
The long and short of it is, don't be afraid to experiment, because this was the first time that we were like really doing this, quote unquote, per your instructions and everything. And with the water divination, with the tea leaves, those were both our first times. Maybe this is part of your new chapter and your new era, trying out some different tools, opening yourself up spiritually to receive information in new ways.
I love that journey for you.
For me, not for you too. You're not going to hear journey?
No, that was for the listener. I'm sorry. I love it for the listener. I thought I was speaking directly to the listener.
Okay. I was just like, it's only for me trying new things? You're not trying new things? For everyone, for all of us.
For per tutti. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more, the resources we used to prepare for this episode are listed in the show notes.
If you're curious to develop your intuition, we've partnered with the Nuurvana Be Light program to give our listeners a $500 discount on tuition fees. Email us for more details and we'll connect you with the founder, Deganit Noor.
Want to connect with us? You can reach me, Christine, at Channeled by Christine with one L on Instagram.
And you can reach me, Renee, at _read by Renee, or connect with us both via email at synergytosynastry@gmail.com.
Keep your spirit curious and your aura sparkling.
We'll see you when the stars next align. Did you not know who Gabby was before?
I didn't, because I don't watch The Bachelor.
I've been following her since she was on Clayton's season.
So
I saw her when she was a contestant, and then she became a bachelorette, co-bachelorette. She did Dancing with the Stars.
When she was talking about people emailing her at like 3:00, she'd rather like stab her eye with a dull chopstick. That is me. Do not come at me at 3 p.m. wanting to review slides. Like, I don't care. I don't want a creative call at 3:00. Gabby, you are my Lord and Savior.
I am really curious what her chart is. She has such a specific and unusual speech pattern.
Mm-hmm. Gabby, to me, is a young Moira Rose.
Oh, wow. I can see that.
The emphasis she places on like random syllables. It just,
Yes.
it's Moira Rose.